Welcome, everybody. We'd love to welcome all of you to Dr. Tritico's webinar presentation this morning, Assessment for Co-Curriculars and Operations. We are just so pleased to have Dr. Tritico with us from the University of Houston downtown. Dr. Tritico also serves as a member of the TxAHEA Planning Committee, and so it's been a joy to work with you, Blake, on the Planning Committee, and we are just so thrilled that you put this presentation together for all of us here in the TxAHEA community. It's really, really an honor to have you here this morning. And it's an honor to have the rest of y'all here joining us on the webinar. I apologize, my webcam is not working this morning, but I'm Jennifer Hughes, and I'm president of TxAHEA. I'm the managing director of planning and assessment here at Texas Tech, and we just have a terrific TxAHEA organization full of wonderful folks who are willing to share their expertise. And we so hope that all of you guys will consider joining us in San Antonio in late September for our annual conference. We are just thrilled about it. It's at the Marriott Plaza in San Antonio, just a few steps from the Riverwalk. And it's just a gorgeous hotel setting. And I don't know about you, but I just cannot wait to get the heck out of town. My family and I were fully vaccinated, and we just can't wait to get back to some semblance of normalcy. And so I cannot wait to attend a conference. It seems like such a luxury now. And so I hope that you'll join us. We put on a really great conference. Not only do we have really stellar sessions with professionals really from around the country, but also we just put together a really nice party. And it's just really fun to be around other assessment professionals and to enjoy our time together. So I really hope you'll consider joining us the end of September in San Antonio. The registration is $199, and we also do have a virtual conference option that we're putting together for perhaps those of you whose institutions are prohibiting travel, or maybe as we all are, budgets are tight, so we are trying to offer that virtual option for you if you can't make it to the conference. So why don't we go ahead and start Dr. Tritico's presentation here. Let me go ahead and offer his bio to you, which is really impressive. And we, again, thank you so much, Blake, for putting this together for the association. Dr. Tritico spent 30 plus years in the private sector as a management consultant, specializing in operations and turnaround prior to joining academia. Upon completion of an MA, he became a lecturer in CHSS at Sam Houston State University. And while completing his doctorate, he joined the University of Houston downtown as an assistant director of assessment for Co-Curriculars and Operations, a role he currently fills. So Dr. Tritico, we will turn it on over to you, and we thank you again so much in advance for your presentation and for your time in preparing it.
Well, thank you very much. Thank everyone for attending, and I apologize that we've had to reschedule this until summertime. It was originally scheduled to be done earlier, but that didn't work, so thank you. I'd like to take some time to talk about assessment for co-curricular and operations and what that looks like. So a quick look into assessment history. So back in 1987, the Tennessee legislature told the university system there, if you want any money, you have to show me that you're making progress. And so that's one of the first cases of assessment that was put on the academic community. The last 20 years have seen a phenomenal growth in assessment. And I would say at this point, academic assessment is fairly stable. It's fairly well received within the academic community. Student affairs then became the next big area for assessment. And then co-curriculars are now coming into focus with that, but we are lagging behind. Some of the problems with assessing co-curriculars is that these individuals are relatively new to assessment. It's often being done by people with a business or a non-academic background, or people that may have started within academia, but moved to administration fairly quickly in their careers. And I've seen that there's a failure to understand why assessment is needed and what assessment actually is. If just looking at U of H downtown, if you take the co-curricular and operations side, there's 60 staff people involved from the VP to director levels. Compare that to the academic side, and you've got 31 from the dean to the chairs. So, where's the opportunity to have a greatest impact? I would argue that it's within your co-curricular and operations areas. Treat your co-curriculars like a business, I would say, and measure accordingly. If you look at admissions, financial aid, registrar facilities, other CC&O groups, they are run, typically, they're process-driven organizations, and they can be run like business. So how do we effectively measure these groups is a question. Excuse me. Often there's not an easy way to measure a traditional academic outcome against a co-curricular or operations group. However, measurements can be made. For example, one institution I know of processes financial aid in 3 days for 22,000 students with 3 staff. Another institution uses 21 people and processes financial aid in 2 to 3 weeks for 15,000 students. I think there's room for improvement, and there is measurement that can be made, and there's a way to look at those processes. So ask yourselves, is our assessment effective? What are we measuring? Why and how are we measuring it? Are we improving or not? There is a good possibility that the assessment criteria is not changed in some time. Measurement may no longer be relevant, and improvement or lack of it is marked but not investigated. So I look and say, there's a possibility to use some different tool sets here. DMAIC, funnels, Pareto analysis, a fishbone or Ishikawa diagram, process maps, brainstorming, use of the 5 whys, and CPOC. And we'll go through each of these during our presentation today. DMAIC stands for Define, Measure, Analyze, Improve, and Control. It's a relatively well-known process within the business community, and especially within the Six Sigma world. It's used as a problem-solving approach. It says you will define the problem, you quantify the problem through measurement, analysis to identify the cause or root cause of it. You improve because you've solved the root cause, and then you verify improvement. And then you control through maintaining your gains and pursuing perfection. Now, perfection may be a broad stretch, but let's just say we can pursue progress. Here's the visual on that, if you wish. The decision-making process is something else. This was described by John Dewey in 1910, and it's still relevant and works today. So it starts with problem and need recognition, a search for information, evaluation of alternatives, and a purchase decision. It looks like this. So you have awareness, interest, decision, and action. If you were to take your funnel, it shows what kind of numbers are needed at each stage of the process, and it indicates the quality of your leads and your inputs, and it also shows defects in your system. For example, if I put in 100 applications to my university at the top under awareness, how many come out all the way at the bottom in action? Do I get 1? Do I get 10? Do I get 50? And then is there a spot, for example, where these 100 applications, where it drops down, where I get 1 actual that comes all the way through and enrolls? Where did the other 99 break out and go? That shows me where I've lost them. So again, how many inputs are required to get 1 output? Are your leads or inputs of high quality, and where does your system break down? A Pareto analysis, it's also known as the vital few and the trivial many. Basically, doing 20% of the work, you can generate 80% of the benefit of doing the entire job. And conversely, 80% of your problems are twice to 20% of your causes. So problems are sorted based on what they affect: customer service, technical issues, product defects, delays, backlogs. Basically, you look at any kind of process and say, what is being affected by this? So you can identify a problem or more than one problem, then list or identify the causes and issues for those problems, score them by assigning a number based on negative impact, organize these problems into groups, and develop and implement action plans to solve problems, focusing on the higher scored problems first. This is called a fishbone or an Ishikawa diagram. It's used to determine cause and effect. The effect goes at the fish head. It becomes brief and very succinct. It uses facts and numbers, and it's also a place to gain agreement from the team. We all agree that this is the effect that we're trying to solve. So brainstorm the cause. What are the influencing factors? They can be typically things like people, manpower, process or methods used, materials, measurements. It determines the actual causes of the problems, and then you take what are the top 2 or 3 possible causes that can be resolved and have the most impact on effect. It answers the why question. The steps going forward then are develop process maps, potentially do some brainstorming, and look at the 5 whys. Process maps are really nothing more than a graphic display of steps, events, and operations that make up a process. It's a pictorial illustration which identifies steps, inputs, and output, and gives you a step-by-step picture of the process as it exists. It's also a graphic technique for dissecting a process by capturing and integrating combined knowledge of all persons associated with the process. For example, this is a process map for a phone call. You lift the receiver, dial the number, ring. Is there an answer? Yes. You say hello, have a conversation, then hang up. Go back to answer. Is there an answer? No. Then you hang up. This was obviously a process map done by a younger person because they didn't leave a voicemail. So brainstorming is another way to look at producing ideas or solving problems. I think we're all familiar with what brainstorming is and how to do it. Basically, with brainstorming, your questions become more productive when they're open-ended versus closed, when they're short questions versus long, and simple versus complex. So, and it's been my experience that about 80% of the time, a brainstorming exercise will produce at least one question that usefully reframes the problem and provides a new angle for solving it. Looking at the 5 whys, this is a problem. I ran through a red light. Why? I was late for work. Why? I woke up late. Why? My alarm clock broke. Why? I didn't check if it worked. Why? I forgot to do it last night. So now you know why you ran through the red light. Here's another problem that may be a little more germane to our situations. The newsletter for the latest software updates didn't go out on time. Why? Updates were not implemented until the deadline. Why? Because developers were still working on the new features. Why? One of the new developers didn't know the procedures. Why? He was not trained properly. Why? Because the CTO believes that new employees don't need thorough training and they should learn while working. So, swim lane diagrams is essentially a who does what chart. This is used by multi-department organizations to illustrate cooperative processes, and it can also be a very simple way to resolve confusion around who owns what part of a process. Within my own institution, I often hear, we don't own the data, or we don't control this or that. My previous institution, we owned all of this data, and the list goes on. Swim lanes are a very easy way to get everyone on the same page and clear up ownership issues. So, for an order processing, here's a quick swim lane map. And then there's a CPOC diagram. It's a tool used by a team to identify the relevant elements of a process improvement project before work begins. It takes a complex project that may not be well scoped and is typically employed at the measure phase of the DMAIC process. The benefits of using a CPOC include that it provides input for training materials and process documentation. It provides a starting point for process improvement or transformation, and it provides a consistent approach for analysis and improving a process, as well as a simple but very high-level view of the process and its elements. Let me ask this: how many big projects just start or are managed by project managers without detailed process knowledge? And how often have you been a part of a project in academia and actually been asked to review a scope document? I would also ask, do training materials exist for the staff jobs that are doing this process? And when is the last time that anybody looked at improving a process? With a CPOC diagram, here is the suppliers, inputs, process, output, and customer. This, for example, is how to make a pizza. Your suppliers are grocery stores, dairy farms, vegetable farms. The inputs become dough sauce, pepperoni, cheese, and peppers. The process: prepare the dough, add sauce, add toppings, add cheese, bake in the oven, remove and package. You can get either a whole pizza or a slice, and the customer gets dine-in, take-out, or home delivery. So again, a high-level look at a process considering all the inputs and outputs. So there are a number of assessment tools that are used in the process in the private sector, and they encourage a new way to look at business functionality within academia. And I would encourage you to ask yourself, can these tools be used within your department, your area, your group? And with that, I will ask, do we have any questions?
Hello, this is Candace at Barra College. So I'm very familiar with a lot of these tools. We use them in process improvement, kind of almost separate in a sense from what we're doing in assessment. So I'm curious, in what way or which of these tools are you using in terms of assessment planning, say for institutional effectiveness? Is it more or less that you're asking folks to apply these to their processes to the ends of coming up with their assessment plan? Like, how have you integrated this?
It's in the process of integration is slow here. I'll give you that. And it is something that is not currently a part of the planning process. However, it's something that people are beginning to take a look at as to saying, we'd set a goal of 85% for this particular outcome or success criteria. We only hit 60%. We've hit 60% for 3 years in a row. Why? And what's causing that? And that's more where I think we're seeing the use of these kind of tools.
Great, that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Yeah, and Candace, what I'm really truly hoping to get to is that as we develop the next round of continuous improvement plans, that we're able to look at these and say, let's go back and say, what did we not do well over the last 6 years that this plan was in place, and take the top most impactful items and apply tools to them to see what can we do to do better.
Like, this is Jennifer. This is, I just have a comment here. I can see how the 5 whys in particular could be really helpful when we all are meeting with academic folks on ways to improve their assessment methods and assessment plans. I can see going through that 5 why exercise with department chairs and program coordinators could be a good way for them to even elaborate further on what's not working in their assessment plan, especially after just having come out of COVID. I think there are lots of reasons maybe why assessment hasn't gone the way that they planned, or maybe students are underperforming as a result of changes in modality. But I could see that 5 why exercise could be really helpful for our faculty. And also, I think it's very exploratory, right? And they like to, I think, just kind of converse and share ideas and explain and justify. And I think that 5 why approach just could be a good way to increase dialogue or encourage dialogue. That was just a comment, Blake.
Thank you. You know, back to Candace's question is about using these tools for planning. This is not necessarily a tool set that lends itself to planning per se, but more to process, if you will. And the one that I would point to as being probably the most significant is comparing 2 different institutions and their ability to process financial aid. If I can take a 3-person staff and process financial aid for 22,000 students within 3 days, and the other one has 30-some people and takes 3 weeks to do 15,000, something's not right. We can do better. So that's where you can put those type of process improvement tools to work.
Blake, we have a question in the comments. If you don't mind, I can read it aloud.
Go right ahead.
I know when I'm
Please.
presenting, it's sometimes hard to follow the comments. Blake, so here's a question from Amber. Are there key criteria that you may suggest to determine the appropriate tool for the task at hand? That's a great question.
Are there key criteria to determine the appropriate tool?
Yes.
I would say start with the DMA IC process, and then based on that, let's see, that will help drive the tool that you'll use. So for example, if I have problems with measurement, then I can, that's where my problem first appears. Then I can use a fishbone to look at that and say, what are cause and effect, or so yes, there are. Are there any other questions at this point?
Blake, I just had one question. I'm Dan Stroud. What kind of, have you had a lot of challenges in your administration with getting some of this assessment done, as far as in your non-academic, how does your non-academic assessment community respond?
It's a mixed bag. Some people are all about it and say, let's go, let's do better. Let's see where we are. Others are foot draggers. Others would rather have a root canal. I mean, I think it's no different than most institutions doing assessment. You've got some people that are very positive about it, see it as a good thing. Others see it as something that's required, so they're going to have to do it. And, others would rather do anything but that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Blake, it looks like we've got a couple more questions coming. Will Roberts asks, I think this is probably among the folks here on the webinar, can people share examples of using operations to support learning outcomes assessment? And then we have another question from Annalisa Garcia. Can you provide an example how you've implemented it in co-curricular experiences, and are you using rubrics?
Can we provide what was the last question, Jennifer?
Sure, Blake. The last one was, can you provide an example how you have implemented it in co-curricular experiences, and are you using rubrics?
The answer to that is yes, we are using rubrics for some things. And they're built into the continuous improvement plan and they're a part of the continuous improvement report that will be done on any given year. So, so yes, for example, enrollment communications, for example, puts out a lot of pieces of work, and they will have a rubric that goes through a small group of people and says, who evaluate and score these pieces of work, saying, is this, is it consistent? Does it do this? Does it meet these standards, etc.? So yes, very much in co-curriculars, that's something that happens.
My apologies.
Can
I qualify too? Have you been using, and this is fantastic, co-curricular more specifically in leadership development? Obviously in like the majority of co-curriculars, I normally think of clubs and organization leadership programs, employability, co-curriculars in that way, because I think we struggle with the sense of belonging, and especially as we're using a little bit more inclusive framework of sense of belonging. How do you measure that?
Well, yes, they are included in leadership development at a variety of levels within the institution. Is that your question, Annalisa?
Yes, more specifically, is there an example in those programs how you're implementing those kinds of measurements?
No, I not really. This is something that is a ground up as opposed to a top down. And it's being largely implemented through a co-curricular and operations committee that meets once a month with the goal of how do we improve our assessment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Blake. Gosh, we have an interesting comment, you guys, from Amber also about linking learning outcomes to marketable skills. I know those of us here in Texas, that is a pretty hot topic conversation at the moment. I know we at Texas Tech are also identifying marketable skills within learning outcomes, but I'd be so interested, Amber, it sounds like you're leveraging some of that work on with regard to your Perkins processes. That sounds really interesting. If you want to share more about that.
Sure. And I would say these efforts are in some beginning stages, as we're all trying to come to terms with this. But given some of the Perkins 5 new legislation and requirements on the reporting there, that's given us a little bit more ability to push that assessment in a way and to try to make those linkages. So we're really trying to piggyback on those grant reporting requirements and then just more closely integrate them with our student learning outcomes process, so that we're doing things at the same time, because so often, and I come from faculty myself, these sort of things feel like a burden to our faculty. And so just integrating those processes, so it's a one and done sort of situation for them, I think has helped us to help them understand what we're trying to do and get better data and better assessment information, and then also make those linkages a little more clear, because those are the subject matter experts that know that, and that's not something we can really do without faculty clearly expressing those linkages between the skills and the student learning outcomes.
Thank you so much, Amber, for explaining that better. That's great. That sounds like a really, very thoughtful exercise to begin to link all of that with Perkins 5. That's great. That's great. Blake, we've got another question here from Carlos Cuellar. Blake, at your institution, and I think this goes for everybody else as well, at your institution, are co-curricular programs units required to engage in the exercises you presented on? If so, do they report these activities in the scheduled institutional assessment reports?
No, they are not required. And at my institution in particular, we encourage, we nudge, we gently guide, but we don't demand that you do anything, and we have no ability to demand that you do anything. So it is a process, not an event. And if they do use something like that, then yes, they are, Carlos, they are part of the institutional assessment reports that can say, using this process or using this tool set, we determined that, and notified or noticed an improvement of. So yes, they are reporting when they're used.
Great. We've got a comment here from Jeff Doyle. Jeff, I find this really fascinating. Jeff writes, this is not totally on topic, but I recently collected more than 10 institutions lists of units that they are asked to provide assessment reports. The results were quite divergent. I think it is interesting how differently various Texas colleges and probably Sachs colleges interpret which units should submit assessment reports. I know here at Texas Tech, we're getting ready for our 2025 reaffirmation, and we're adding quite a few assessment units to our list. So that sounds terrific, Jeff. If you might be willing to share any further information on that, that'd be great. I know I recently saw on the Assess listserv some recent dialogue about assessing athletic units. I know that's something we're going to be adding here at Texas Tech to our list of assessment reporters. So anything more you want to talk about that, Jeff? I think probably the group would love to hear.
Sure. Yeah, I moved into this arena a couple years ago from a role in student life. And so I kind of asked the question, like, why does student life spend so much time on this and lots of other units don't? And they were like, we just do the ones we've always done. And so I did an analysis of all our departments and said, well, it seems like if your unit's going to do one, it should be this group. And, the actual Sachs language is that it's really hazy. It's like, the leader of that area determines who will do it. And so, in some areas we had a leader saying, oh, we'll just do one for all 1,000 employees. Another area where a leader would say, we'll do one for each unit. And that seemed to me in line with the Sachs, but also not very fair or consistent. And so I kind of went out and said, like to athletics, they were doing 4 reports. And I was like, well, technically, you're the second largest department or third largest department in terms of staff at our university. And you have 6 different departments. I work with HR to get the org charts for every area. I said, it would seem to make more sense for you guys to be doing these 6 main areas. And they were like, okay, that makes sense. I did the same with advancement. I said, you guys you're doing one for operations and one for alumni, but you're not doing one for capital campaign or this other thing. And they were like, okay, yeah, that's right. We should probably do that. And in other areas like libraries was doing 4 and ITS was doing 4 for each of their units that had probably, 50, 60 employees. And they both wanted to go down to 1. And there's nothing that says they can or can't do that. But I kind of provide the argument indicating, well, generally, this is where we're at Baylor with the number of staff in an area that is doing a report. But I can't, make them do one or the other. But I'm basically trying to inform folks, like if you're going to do an assessment report for 50 units in one VP's area, you're not going to capture a lot of data there. And so I felt like from our job perspective, my goal would be to get some more investment and some breakdowns that result in more meaningful results.
Oh, that's so helpful, Jeff. It's nice to know that other institutions kind of struggle with the same kind of issue too. How much is too much to report? And I get you. The size of athletics is huge on our campus. And how do you accurately represent that in terms of assessment reporting? That's a conundrum. But thank you for sharing that. That's really helpful.
Yeah, and you guys can see the picture I submitted in there too, which is some of the
Great.
results I pulled.
Yeah. Okay, great. I guess I've been just following the chat. I didn't see that image you submitted. Thank you so much. Great. Okay, you guys, we have another question from Carlos at Del Mar College. Blake, I think this would be a great question to get your thoughts on. At our institution, there is a tremendous amount of effort towards supporting the transparency, vulnerability, and accountability necessary to have the why conversations. What strategies did you need to employ to get to that point of having the why?
That is a good question. And Carlos, I think the easiest answer for that is that it's a safe place to have a discussion. When we hold a meeting on assessment, it's not about punishment. It's not about, failure. It's about how do we improve things. And also having practiced or gone through, a why, like the red lights. I ran a red light. Why? Taking somebody through that, or, why was the newsletter delayed? Because of this, and you keep going through, and they realize that it's actually a problem solving tool and it's not leaving somebody to get hung out to dry. Build some trust, build some faith. And, and then the other side of that is that the team doing assessment for any given area, working with their, director, assistant director, the person from the assessment world, has established a relationship and a certain level of trust with them. I mean, that's how you do it. There's, I don't think there's any other real strategy involved.
Thank you, Blake. Gosh, we've got some other just really great comments and resources, you guys, here in chat. Will Roberts has shared a great comment about how often the SLOs themselves are very marketable. Gosh, we couldn't agree more with you on that, Will. And then you guys, Annalisa, you'll have to forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your name. Annalisa posted a great link there about Open Skills Network. I think we can certainly all find that really helpful.
And I just wanted to, again, I'm not related to it. I just volunteered recently to it, but they are developing an open source library in the near future. So they're hosting a upcoming conference, and again, it'll be free. So the work that is being done there, it's a national project that they launched in the middle of the pandemic. They started, I think, October. I am not the point of contact. I was just amazed by their effort.
Oh, no, thank you for sharing it. No, that's so helpful. It's so helpful. And I don't know about the rest of you guys, but it's been easy to sort of feel a little disconnected among us as assessment colleagues. And so it's just great it's just so helpful when someone willingly and lovingly shares a resource. It's great. That's great. We all got to help each other out. Yes, Jeff, in your comments at the very last chat there, yes, these reports I'm sharing combine the non-academic learning areas and the administrative areas. Yeah, we've grappled with that a lot about trying to distinguish the two, and even moving some into one category or the other here at Texas Tech. Great. You guys, well, what else is on your mind? Is there anything else that's on your mind that you want to literally chat about? It's been so nice to kind of be a little informal here with each other. Oh, Jeff, we're going to have to take a look at that UT data that you just posted. We've got a lot of homework to do here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, some of you may know better about that. This hit national news a few years ago, but where they literally worked with the United States Census, they signed some sort of contract with them and used Social Security numbers. And so when they share their placement and salary data, like when you're looking at that for some schools, you're looking at a response rate of 10%, right? And other schools, it's, Baylor, it's a response rate of 99.9%. And so you just don't know how solid is that placement data. But at UT, man, that's pretty impressive when you're literally using US Census data to show what's happening.
Well, you're right. It does sound very powerful, very powerful. Somebody put a lot of time and effort into making that happen, or probably not, many people.